In this episode, we're going to talk about an English band formed by two brothers. One was a gifted singer-songwriter. The other one played a mean guitar. They had a string of hits, but they fought, well, like brothers, and the band disbanded. Think I'm talking about Oasis? No, I'm not. Okay, let's find out who. Let's drop the needle. The band formed by the two brothers, well, they're called the Kinks. They formed in 1963 with Ray Davies as the singer-songwriter and his brother Dave as the lead guitarist. They were joined by Mick Avery and Peter Quaife. Originally, the band was called the Ravens, and they played regularly around London to mild success. But it was enough success that they were able to get a recording contract in 1964 from Pi Records. It was at this point that they changed their name to the Kinks. Over the years, there have been many theories about where the name came from. Were they kinky? Ray Davies is quoted as saying the name came from their manager, who said, "The way you look and the clothes you wear, you ought to be called the Kinks." At this time in 1963, an act would record a single. And if the single would become a hit, then maybe you'd get to record an album. The Kinks recorded two singles, Long Tall Sally and You Still Want Me, but both of them failed to chart. Their record label told them that unless their next record was a hit, they would be dropped. So Ray Davies decided to sit down and write his version of Louie Louie. And in 1964, he did, and he called it You Really Got Me. And when they went to record it, his brother Dave sliced the speaker in his amplifier to get that fuzzy guitar sound. You Really Got Me was a hit, and therefore, out comes an album. In the UK, it's called the Kinks, but in the States, it's called You Really Got Me. Then came the follow-up single, All Day and All Night, and it was a hit as well. So there's a second album. Now, both these songs really only had 3 chords, so any garage band worth its salt would play them. And I know the band I was in, we played both these songs almost at every gig, and they were definite crowd pleasers. 2 new singles followed, Set Me Free and Tired of Waiting for You, and both were hits. And of course, this led to 2 more US-only albums, Kinda Kinks and Kinks Kingdom. On the back of the hit singles, the Kinks toured constantly until a very infamous incident happened in 1965. The exact cause was never really explained, but in 1965, the American Federation of Musicians revoked permits for the band to play in the US, in effect banning the Kinks from America. In his autobiography, Ray Davies says that the incident took place when the Kinks appeared on Dick Clark's Where the Action Is. One of the crew members made an anti-British slur, which the Kinks took offense to, and a fight ensued. As a result, they were banned from America. Now, obviously, this hurt their sales, so Ray Davies had to figure out what markets the Kinks could actually play in. And of course, they went back to Britain and did just that. While the Kinks were touring in India, Ray wrote See My Friends, and the song is very influenced by Indian ragas. Dave plays a really jangly guitar. Now, there's a story that when the Beatles heard this, they went, wow, he's playing a sitar. We got to get one of those. Now, I don't know whether that story is true or not, because the Beatles were always credited with using a sitar the first time in Norwegian Wood, the first artist to use a sitar on a pop record. But the fact of the matter is, Norwegian Wood came out after See My Friends. So maybe the Beatles were influenced by it. Who knows? The Kinks continued to record albums in the UK, but didn't have much success with them in the US. But singles were a different matter. They had a hit with A Well-Respected Man and A Dedicated Follower of Fashion. By this time, their sound was changing. The hard rock edge was softened, and Ray was beginning to write songs with a decidedly English feel. Their next single, Sunny Afternoon, did quite well, and then it was followed by their most popular song, Waterloo Sunset. In fact, that song is so popular that 40 years later, Ray was asked to sing it at the closing of the Olympics in England. Around 1967, they stopped touring and Ray suffers a nervous breakdown. During his recovery, he continues to write, and the result is an album called The Kinks Are the Village Green Preservation Society. The album told of English life in the countryside and hamlets, and it contained no hit singles. History has been kind to this album, though, and is largely recognized as one of the Kinks' best. In 1969, they record my favorite Kink album, and that is Arthur, or The Decline of the British Empire, which I talked about in an episode quite a while ago. I think it was my Desert Island episode. It's a terrific album. Around this time, they also negotiated an end to the ban in the US and started on tour. Next up comes the song Lola, which is a big hit in both the US and the UK. It's a song about a transvestite, but that's not what got them in trouble. The song was banned by the BBC because it contained the lyrics Coca-Cola, and the BBC would not play it because that was a brand name. So the Kinks had to quickly re-record a new version where Coca-Cola is replaced by Cherry Cola. The album is Lola versus the Power Men and The Money Go Round Part 1. Besides the hit Lola, other strong songs are The Money Go Round, This Time Tomorrow, Ape Man, and Power Man. The album is a critical look at the music business, and it's called Part 1 because they started work on a sequel, Part 2, but it was never finished. Next up, they decided to record a soundtrack for a movie called Percy. Now, the movie is about a penis transplant. Needless to say, the movie and the album were, pardon the expression, a flop. In 1971, the Kinks had moved to RCA as a record label and recorded Muswell Hillbillies. This album changed their sound dramatically. They were no longer hard rockers, they were more country twinged. I really tried to get into the album, I listened to it a lot, but it wasn't one of my favorites. But when they moved to RCA, they still owed Reprise Records 2 more albums. So Reprise quickly put together 2 compilation albums. The first, The Kink Chronicles, was released in 1972. It's a double album, and besides non-album singles, it contains music from 5 albums that the band had released in the 5 years previous to being reintroduced to America. This is all music the Kinks had recorded during their American ban. The second Reprise compilation is the Great Lost Kinks album, which came out in 1973. It contains a lot of unreleased material that Ray had intended that stay unreleased. But since material was still owned to Reprise under terms of their contract, the album came out. But the Kinks continued to move on, and the next real album that they put out was called Everybody's in Showbiz, and it contains that great song, Celluloid Heroes. It's got terrific lyrics. I wish my life was a non-stop Hollywood movie show, a fantasy world of celluloid villains and heroes, because celluloid heroes never feel any pain, and celluloid heroes never really die. In the song, Ray name-checks a number of Hollywood stars, including Greta Garbo, Rudolph Valentino, Bela Lugosi, Bette Davis, George Sanders, Marilyn Monroe, and Mickey Rooney. Enthralled with the success of Everybody's in Showbiz, Ray decides to take the Kinks in an even more theatrical direction. Their live show now includes Ray in various costumes, affecting the persona of the songs as they're singing. 2 double albums were quickly released, concept albums called Preservation Act 1 and Preservation Act 2. Unfortunately, the concept was a little too much for most of the audience, and people started to think that the Kinks had turned camp, and that was not particularly good. Undaunted, Ray continues on this theatrical bent with 2 more albums. The Kinks present a soap opera, which introduces us to Star Maker, which was a role that Ray started to use on stage. And the last of the theatrical releases, Schoolboys in Disgrace. In 1977, they changed directions again and decide to attack arena rock. And they release Sleepwalker, which is a return to their hard rock sound and is a hit for them. They released State of Confusion, and one song from that album explodes and becomes a huge hit. Come Dancing is the Kinks' biggest hit in over 20 years since Tired of Waiting for You. They kept recording, but they kept changing record labels, and as a result, their records didn't really sell. In 1990, the Kinks were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. As their popularity continued to decline, both Ray and Dave decided to write autobiographies. Now, Dave's is called Kink, where Ray's is called X-Ray. And I've read Ray's, and I highly recommend it. They certainly have had a very interesting career, from ripping off Louie Louie to having a string of hits, to getting banned in America, to then having a triumphant return, to then going to over-the-top theatrical presentations. The Kinks were never boring. Ray and Dave still fight with each other, and both have had recent health issues. As for a reunion, well, it's been talked about for years. And Dave has said, "We've been talking about it, and it could still happen." Well, we'll just have to wait for that reunion to happen. Thanks for watching. Pull out some Kinks music, give it a listen, and keep it rocking. If you liked this episode, hit the like button, and you can also leave me a comment down below, and I'll respond to you. If you subscribe, we'll let you know when future episodes come out.